Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, we got a lot of stuff to get to. We're going to touch on how the core four responded in that game against the Philadelphia Flyers, whether or not Austin Matthews should have maybe participated a little bit more in the extracurriculars towards the end of that one. We'll touch on some of the lineup changes that Sheldon Keefe made ahead of that game, and then talk about a player who's set to make his season debut on Saturday against the Boston Bruins, and then give an update on Jake Muzzin later on in the video. So the Maple Leafs return home on a 4-game winless streak after their 5-game road trip out west, and this was a Wednesday night game against the Philadelphia Flyers in November that was just way more important than it should have been. But the best players on this team, the leaders on this team, they came to play and they responded. It's one step in the right direction. It's a pretty nice first step. You know, John Tavares scoring a hat trick and having a 4-point night. Matthews pitching in a goal and an assist. Mitch Marner smiling and looking like he's having some fun. A very good game from all the best players on this team and the leadership group as well. But like we said in our previous video, the Maple Leafs are very capable of having games like they did Wednesday night against the Flyers. It's not just about doing it once or twice or here and there. It needs to be a consistent effort, because that one game against the Flyers definitely does not excuse or make up for the effort that they put forward in those games against the Anaheim Ducks or the San Jose Sharks, or even at home against the Coyotes. But just to touch on John Tavares once again, you know, the hat trick night, the 4-point night, it's really nice to see the Maple Leafs captain having a bit of a bounce back season after, you know, last year the points were there for him, but you could really see where he was struggling. This season, he looks a lot quicker, a lot faster. On that second goal that he scored against the Flyers, that was him just saying, "Move out of my way. I'm scoring here," and it was absolutely nasty. You know, even though the bulk of his points have come on the power play and the 5-on-5 scoring isn't quite there just yet, that's really a problem with the entire team so far. You know, Matthews' last 3 goals have come on the power play. He still just has 1 5-on-5 goal so far this year, but like we showed in the previous video, he still leads the NHL in terms of 5-on-5 scoring opportunities. So for me, it feels like it's just a matter of time before Matthews and this team breaks through and starts scoring goals in bunches, even without the man advantage. And then just to touch on a bit of the extracurriculars that happened towards the end in this one, Matthews breaks into the Flyers zone. He tries this like between the legs scoring move, and then Travis Konecny takes exception. And I mean, yeah, I get it. It's 5-2. You don't want to run up the score. I understand it from their point of view, but they slash each other. There's a bit of shoving, and then Mark Giordano comes flying in from like the top rope, tackles him over. He ends up fighting Kevin Hayes, and Michael Bunting is there as well. All the while, Matthews is just kind of skating along the outside, watching all this happen. He does give Konecny a bit of a shove afterwards, and he kind of laughs him off. And some people were upset that Matthews didn't engage a bit more in that scenario, but my thoughts are, you know, that's the Maple Leafs' best player. He's their best goal scorer. He's had wrist problems in the past. And it's also a Wednesday night against the Flyers, and it's Travis Konecny. You know, if that was like Brad Marchand and the Boston Bruins, 100%, I'm with you. I want Matthews to absolutely pump him. But at the same time, you know, you got to pick your spots, and that just didn't feel like one of them to me. And then in terms of Mark Giordano, I mean, he's 39 years old. He's an absolute warrior. He did stuff like that with the Calgary Flames. He's an awesome teammate. And for a guy who's played 159 minutes at 5-on-5 so far this season, he's only been on the ice for 1 goal against, and it was very much not his fault in that game against the Anaheim Ducks. He's been awesome for the Maple Leafs so far this year. But we mentioned off the top that the Maple Leafs had some changes to their lineup in that game. And I want to talk about those, starting with the defensive pairings first. The biggest change being that Morgan Rielly and TJ Brodie were split up, and now TJ Brodie was on a pairing with Justin Holl. And we showed it in the previous video. For Justin Holl and the Maple Leafs at 5-on-5, if we're looking at the numbers with him on the ice versus off the ice, both offensively and defensively, there's a 36% swing so far this year, where the Maple Leafs are a better team when he's on the bench. He's had an absolute disaster start to this year. And one of the many things that Justin Holl has really struggled with to start this season has been getting the puck out of his own zone, whether it be with a pass or skating it out. I mean, there was that game against the Anaheim Ducks when he tried like 2 or 3 times to get it out of his own zone, and then finally a hot mic picked up Mitch Marner yelling at him, saying something along the lines like, "Just effing go," or "There you effing go," once he finally did get it out. And TJ Brodie is the best Maple Leafs defender in terms of going back and getting the puck out of his own zone, whether it be with a pass or possession. And Cam Sharon tweeting this out the other day, and I'll leave his Twitter linked in the description of this video if you're not following him already. TJ Brody has a very steady hand. When going back to retrieve shoot-ins, he's beaten to the puck or turned it over on the first touch just 36% of the time. The rest of the Leafs D combined for over 58%. So if you're taking the guy who's struggled the most with that and pairing him with the guy who's the best at it, maybe that alleviates some of that pressure for Justin Holl, and then he's able to get other parts of his games back on track, and then we can work on this later. But at the same time, we're really grasping at straws. The writing is kind of on the wall. He really is the Maple Leafs' 6th or 7th best defenseman when everybody is healthy. Before we move off of the Maple Leafs blue line, it looks like Timothy Liljegren is coming off of LTIR, and he's going to make his season debut Saturday night against the Boston Bruins. Looking at their D pairings from Wednesday night against the Flyers, if I had to be honest with you, that Brody and Hall pairing played quite well. So I guess Sheldon Keefe's plan to keep Justin Holl involved and in the lineup is working, or it at least worked in one game so far. But if I had to guess where Liljegren plays in this lineup on Saturday night against the Bruins, I think he slots in alongside Morgan Rielly. If you remember this pairing from last season, they were on the ice for all of the goals for and all of the goals against. But mind you, this was also during a time when the Maple Leafs just could not buy a save from their goaltenders. So while maybe they weren't the greatest defensively, the goaltending heavily contributed to that goals against per 60 number. But as we've talked about so far in this video, the Maple Leafs have struggled to create and score goals at 5-on-5 so far this season. In my mind, it's a no-doubter. It's worth the risk to reward factor of pairing these two guys together and getting this team going offensively. And then another big talking point from this past week in terms of lineup changes was Sheldon Keefe's decision to scratch Nick Robertson. For Nick Robertson, who's got 2 goals and 4 points in 6 games so far this year, he was a real big story in that game against the Dallas Stars, scoring a goal and then the game winner in overtime. But as Cam notes here, and Cam's worked for some NHL front offices in the past, scratching Robertson is an unpopular move, but I have him at 12th among league forwards in scoring chance contributions, and he's also 14th among forwards in winning pucks in the offensive zone. Nick Robertson's a very talented player, and he will be on this team at some point, either this year or next season, but when you put it in terms like that, I understand. And on the flip side, the Maple Leafs recalled Pontus Holmberg from the Toronto Marlies, and he made his NHL debut in that game against the Flyers Wednesday night. And he played center on a line with Pierre Engvall and Kalle Järnkrok. And the reason why he played on that line is actually kind of cool. Because of his limited English, Sheldon Keefe wanted to put him in a position to succeed, so he played him with the 2 guys who are fluent in Swedish. If we're looking at Pontus Holmberg, he's 23 years old. He's a center left winger. He's 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds. And if we're looking at the quick scouting report here, offensively skilled player with good speed and exceptional hockey sense, skilled at setting up plays but could improve his shooting ability a bit. And then another one here, ability to promptly set up his teammates, has a knock for figuring out and exploring the simpler play available. And if we're looking at his numbers from the SHL over the last couple of years, he did win playoff MVP and his team did win the championship a couple of seasons ago, and he was a point per game player for them last season. And all in all, by the numbers, that line played pretty decently for the Maple Leafs that night. But it wasn't that line in the bottom 6 that stood out. It was the other one with Zach Aston-Reese, David Kampf, and Dennis Malgin that was absolutely dominant. And if you're looking at that line, part of what made that 4th line with Zach Aston-Reese, David Kampf, and Nick Aube-Kubel struggle so much to start the season was that they didn't really have anyone there to help them transition the puck up ice very well. And that's what Dennis Malgin excels at. He's a bit of a two-way player. He's got a bit of a scoring touch, as we've seen so far this season, but he's very good at getting the puck up and down the ice. And you pair him with Zach Aston-Reese, who should be a physical player, hasn't really been so far this year, and David Kampf, who just makes the nice, easy, simple plays. And that line should be fairly effective. I don't know how much a bottom 6 like this will score, but then again, going into this season, the expectation for the Maple Leafs and their kind of new look bottom 6 was to play hard, to play fast, to be more physical, and to be better defensively. And if they didn't score as many goals as what they did last season, well, maybe they allowed less goals. And as long as the net was positive in the end, the goals from their top 6 guys should mean more. We've seen early on so far this year what it looks like when those top 6 guys are on a bit of a cold streak, and it's kind of ugly. So maybe later on in the year, you still want that bottom 6 to be good defensively, but maybe the Maple Leafs later on in the year look to try to add a little bit more offense there, because you can see where it could be a bit problematic. Moving off of their blue line and their bottom 6 and looking at the goaltending so far this year, it's just been 7 games, but right now, Ilya Samsonov is top 10 in the NHL in terms of goals save above expected. He's got a save percentage of over .920, and he's made all of the saves that the Maple Leafs have needed him to. Yeah, he's let in a couple of stinkers. He let one in at the start of the 3rd period against the Flyers, but the Maple Leafs did a very good job of picking him up, responding, and it was a very nice team win. Earlier in the video, I said that we had an update on Jake Muzzin. Chris Johnston on Insider Trading saying that Jake Muzzin was in California during the Maple Leafs road trip to see a specialist last week, looking at the head and the neck area where he has had a number of injuries over the last couple of years especially. And he says that there's a legitimate concern of what the next hit could look like if he were to return. And in my mind, right then and there, we're done. Because this is exactly what I've said over the last couple of years. I have not enjoyed watching Jake Muzzin play hockey for this exact same reason. And I know that it's not fair to him, but it's not fair to the team. Like we said a couple of videos ago, for him to be hurt and healthy, and them to just not know what they have in this player, especially in and around the playoffs. If he's hurt or if he's out during the playoffs, the Maple Leafs are just screwed. No team can survive having a $5.6 million question mark, and it's awful to say it like that because I love Jake and I wish he can come back and just be the dynamic two-way defenseman that he was for a number of years in the NHL, especially the first couple of years that the Maple Leafs acquired him. But at this point, I think we're just done. And it's a huge loss. I mean, it starts in the locker room where he's a core piece of this team and he's part of the leadership group. And then on the ice with the physicality that he brings and the type of minutes that he plays, I don't know how you replace that. But if he is out for the remainder of the season, the Maple Leafs are going to have like $5.6 million to work with or so. And if they get salary retention, the sky's almost the limit. They can go out there and really acquire whoever they want. Maybe it's multiple players to try to fill the gap on the blue line and maybe even up front. But in the meantime, we have guys like Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren, 2 very young players. We're going to get to see them play in elevated roles and see what they got. And if they excel in those roles, well, then you're adding to a position that wasn't necessarily a weakness, and you're just improving upon your depth. And if they can't survive there, you go out, you acquire other guys, and that they're going to be able to succeed in lesser roles because they have already. I'm sure we'll talk about this more in the next couple of weeks if there is another update. I don't know. But for now, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Make sure to like it if you did like it and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And guys, I'll see you in the next one. Saturday night against the Boston Bruins. Against the league-leading Boston Bruins, mind you. I hope they show up for that game. It could be a really good one.